Hello, Kenny. How are you? How's everything?
Well, how are you? Great. Great to see you again.
I can't believe that we're doing episode 2.
It brightens my day to see you, honestly. So I'm willing to do this every day as long as you are.
Oh, it's so nice. You know, I just got my favorite corkscrew, my 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 waiter key in the mail, and I'm always surprised with how recently. I'm just opening it up literally as we talk.
Well,
Um,
yeah, I'm excited to see which one you think is the
yeah, exactly. I'm curious about you as well. How recently they've gone up in price a lot, so I like this one a lot. The pull tap. Maybe you've seen it before. It's like the typical waiter key. It's a pull tap. I
best.
like it for a couple of reasons, but I will say that the reason why I ordered this one is because my last one just broke, and it broke not long after I got it, which was surprising. But I like it. It's a two ridged here.
Right. Well,
Um,
I'm going to cut you off and tell you why it broke and why you're buying whatever that piece of junk that you have is. You know that it's funny because for years I that's exactly what I bought, and I have a million of them laying around my house. You know, you have that drawer with all your wine
yeah, all,
paraphernalia,
all the paraphernalia.
right?
Exactly.
And I don't know if it was a friend that showed me this specific. You know, by the way, the key with this, you say it's expensive, and I have no idea because I haven't bought one in probably 5 or 6 years, maybe more. I'm using this guy. I don't know how well it
What
shows
is
up,
that?
and I know I'm gonna. Some people may be listening to this, so I'm going to say what it is in a second. It's called a haiku, and
Haiku.
it's the difference is first of all you can see it like looks a
How do
little.
you spell haiku?
It's spelled the COUP,
Okay.
HICOUP. Now the difference here, it also has that like that kind of two thing, right?
Yeah, I like that.
It's hard to unless you pick this up, you're not going to feel the weight of this versus the one that you're holding in your hand. This weighs probably twice as much.
Oh, this is very light.
Those are very light and they're junk. And this has first of all the screw itself is kind of a double. It's like
Yeah, I
it's
see
like
that.
a DNA version. Well, it's not a double
Yeah,
helix, but it's much heavier. And this and the hinge in here is like supported and whatever. It's a much better made thing to the point that I've opened, as you can imagine, many bottles with this. It doesn't, nothing bends on it, nothing gives on it. The only reason I bought a second one once upon a time was because I'd lost it. And then I found it, and then I had two, and I gave the other one away. But it's a great get, and I don't know what it's selling for. It's interesting you bring that up because I'm going to check a little later how much it's selling for. But I paid $12 for this thing. And
wow. Yeah, I just paid $30 Canadian for this thing.
I don't, I don't know what's happening in that country you live in across the board. Why that would be so expensive, but I pay, maybe it's like $15 now. But on Amazon, it's very cheap, and you will never buy another one. And it's become kind of like my go-to surprise gift to people. I'll just randomly if I'm at someone's house and I see they're using that piece of junk you're using, I will like just this will show up at their house during the week, and they're like, "Wow, it's amazing!" And it looks and feels expensive too. And
It
it's like,
does look and feel expensive. I can see it even through the video.
yeah,
The one thing I'm thinking that is just a reality for me is that often when I'm doing events, I like to carry it in my pocket, and it seems like pretty heavy to have in your pocket.
it's a little bit. It's heavier than that one you have, probably by at least twice. But
Yeah.
it's, I mean, right, I hear that, and it's. But I this is the one that I bring to events, and it's served me well. I don't carry it around. Like, aren't you normally like placed at a table or something like
I
that? Or
am usually
I
placed at a
just,
table, but I like I'm a roam. You know, I like
yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
see people and hang out with everybody, and
I'm
so I like to just have it in my pocket just for use.
so bring that one for your pocket use and bring this one for the bar. This will change your wine opening life. And I don't I guess I've like become that guy in a lot of ways. And I know my friends that are listening to this will say I've always been this guy, but that will mock the things that people use. And every time I see like the rabbit corkscrew or any of those kind of things, I think it's like, what are you doing? It's all those are all gimmicks, and like this thing is cheap, it's well made, it's gonna last you forever, and it's the best one on the market. And it tucks in your pocket. You're not carrying one of those rabbit things in your pocket, right?
Exactly.
It's like I have a funny thing that once because you know you collect these things over the years, and I think my father-in-law gave this to me like many years ago. It's and you've probably seen it. It comes with a little like CO2 canister. Have you ever seen one of
No.
those corkscrews?
Yes. Yeah. And it's amazing.
So the first time I ever did it, I obviously didn't know what I was doing, and I was probably a little over exuberant. And there's still wine stains on my ceiling.
I could imagine. But it's funny that you mentioned those little rabbit things. So my wife and I we're married almost 20 years. And I think the rabbit must have come out right before we got married. You know how every couple has a thing they got too many of as wedding gifts?
Right.
We had, and I wasn't even into wine at the time. We must have gotten 20 of them. No joke, 20 of them as wedding gifts.
Right. So that probably became your gift for a little while.
Yeah, exactly.
Re-gift.
We were just regifting them.
Gifting them. Yeah. So anyway, this is my recommendation. But
Okay.
yeah, good luck with that one.
Okay.
Let me know when it breaks.
Haiku. Okay. What are you drinking?
So something we just like we this is very, we should say this is very like spontaneous, our conversations. That's what we're aiming for here, right? Is spontaneity.
Yes.
And something we literally just came up, we're like, why don't we just talk about like what we have open already? And we thought that was a great idea. So I have left over from a tasting, actually, this Shiloh Petit Verdot 2020.
Ooh, Amichai.
Yes, Amichai. Well, why don't you say what you have first before I talk about it?
Yeah. Okay. I have actually just this nice cheapie that I happen to like, this Dacci Barbara D'Asti.
Sure.
And that I opened it up earlier today. Don't ask why, because
I was going to ask why, but all right, I won't.
And it's about a third gone already, and it was it's just after 5. So yeah.
Well, it is well, it's 5 o'clock somewhere.
It's Adar. That's what I say.
That's
it's
true.
Adar, and because of that, the Jews have every reason to open a bottle of wine that they wouldn't necessarily open in Adar.
Totally agree. You're not getting any arguments from me.
Yeah.
I know and like that wine very much, and it's very inexpensive, and that wine is produced by the River, right?
Well, I think they distribute it. Yeah.
I think they actually made. What does it say on the label?
It says imported by the River Wine.
Right. When I say produced by, I'm saying they have it produced. I don't think
Right.
that Ami Nahari's in there mixing. He may be, actually, for all I know. Maybe in there, like stepping on grapes. In fact,
No, I always knew them for Gabe and Shimon's Twin Sun wines. That
that's
they
right.
produce those.
That's right. But he's brought in some really like inexpensive Italian wines in recent years. So I'm a big fan, because more Italy, if you ask me.
Well, there are only, I think, 2 full kosher wineries in Italy.
That's correct.
Tierra di Seta and Cantino Giuliano are the only 2, right?
Correct.
So everything else coming out of Italy is just going to a non-kosher winery and doing a kosher run, which I think at some point we should talk about that idea.
For sure. That's a good conversation. But what do you think about that wine?
So what do I think? Black cherry. Interesting that it's similar to the last wine. It's funny because I think a lot of people who are just used to kosher wine, when they hear Asti, they're like, "Oh, Asti Spumante."
Right.
Or Moscato d'Asti, right? The one that people usually know is the Moscato d'Asti.
Right.
And so the Asti is actually the capital of the Piedmont region, right?
Yeah, I know it's from Piedmont. I don't know about the capital.
Yeah, it's the capital city of the Piedmont region. And Piedmont, if you look at it, it's kind of southwest Italy. So you have Milan up here, and then you'd have like Nice, France down there.
Okay.
And then Asti's like right in the middle.
Okay. And let me ask you something. When you think Italian wine, like what's the Barbera doesn't immediately come to your mind, right? It's not like, and there aren't them. By the way, interestingly, Shiloh makes a Barbera. They may not make it anymore, but he made a Barbera for a long time, and I always very much like that wine. But you don't see that many like Barberas in the kosher market.
I like the Barbera grape.
Yeah. I like a lot of these Italian grapes. Really,
yeah. Often it's used similar to a Petit Verdot as an emulsifier. I see that often as like on blends, Israeli blends or Italian blends.
You said that, I was like, it's interesting because the Petit Verdot and the Barbera, like they're both like big color. and they're both big color grapes also.
Yes.
Actually, what emulsifier mean? I thought emulsifier is like a thickening agent. Isn't that what an emulsifier?
It's to thicken it and to color
Okay.
it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So that's interesting that we picked those. There you go.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
So I see the Barbara in a lot of other wines and blends, but I rarely see a varietal Barbera.
Correct. You really don't. And that's, I'm sure, even more so in the kosher market. There are not that many of them. And that's the
So,
same with the Petit Verdot.
so
There's
this
not a lot
wine,
of single varietal Petit
yeah,
Verdots. Go ahead. So tell me
this,
about the one.
this wine happens to be really acidic. Kenny, what do you do if you have a really acidic wine and you want it to not be as acidic?
Well, I mean, personally, I love acid wine. That doesn't bother me. I have the other problem. I think when a wine is too fruit forward right away, I'm like, "Ugh." It's like I need a little more balance there. I don't typically. It's why I love Italian wines. Is all that acid that you find,
Right.
and that you find. To answer your question, I don't know. What do you mean? What I mean, it's not what you mean. I understand what you mean. I don't know how I would answer. What do I
Well,
do?
it starts off
But
with a
yeah,
little bite, right?
but
So
but that comes from cool climate and like the less ripe, like the more ripe. That's why you find like nowadays in like a place like Israel, you're gonna have very ripe, or even like warm part of California, you're gonna have real New World, a lot of fruit and a little less acid. And in a place like Italy, you're gonna have more acid, maybe a little less fruit.
right.
But I don't know. Again, that doesn't bother me. So I don't really think about what I have to do. But I don't know what you mean. What can you actually
Well,
to the wine?
I'll tell you.
Here's an answer. Then you do something
Yeah,
wise to. Is that what you're?
exactly. That's
Yeah.
because I was thinking food wise, like how do you balance that out? So this is what I love about Italian wine, and I think you just said it before. It's acidic, but it also has a lot of fruits. So I got aromas of black cherry. I've got raspberry, strawberry, even a subtlety of strawberry. It's like really, really strong blackberry, even. And it's been out for a bit.
Yeah.
So because of that, it's not as acidic as it was when I first opened it.
So you feel that calming down somewhat, which is
Absolutely.
you find that. How much did you pay for that? Do you know how much that retails for that Dacci? It's under 20, right?
It's under
Right.
$20.
Yeah.
It's under $20.
Is that a bushel bottle of wine?
Is it? It is Mavushal.
Yeah.
Yeah, 4.5% alcohol, and it's a DOCG. Let's talk about that for a second.
Go ahead.
That's interesting. So,
Yeah.
much like France or Spain, Italy is controlled, and the government. I'd always wanted to be one of these government people that just, what is your job? I decide whether it's a DOC or a DOCG.
Right. Italy ran behind France in a lot of ways, but it was more restrictive, in fact. And this whole thing that's come about recently with I shouldn't say it's come about recently. It's come about recently, but we're hearing more in the kosher world about the super Tuscans.
Yes.
That whole idea came from the fact that government restrictions in Italy were so tight, they wouldn't let them, like in some places, grow anything but Sangiovese or something. And
Right.
this personally, I'm like, let's taste some cab from Tuscany. I would love to. So that whole idea came from the fact that it was so restrictive that you can only do that. So that's all this DOCG, and they have different names in every country, as you know. And like we touched on that in the last one, where in America it's called now I'm blanking, American Viticultural AVA.
Right.
And some countries are far more restrictive than others, of course. A place like Israel is not nearly restrictive.
Barely any,
Barely
unfortunately.
It's good and bad, that's good and bad. I mean, it's like what happened in Italy until they really revolted against the system. Otherwise, you're just going to be drinking Sangiovese, or maybe some Montepulciano. But like, you generally like, you want kind of both. There's a good balance of government restriction and wine growers being able to do what they want, experiment, and it's like anything else.
And you have wine makers that are just making wine, and I'm not sure it is really wine.
Right.
So that's what happens when it's not controlled.
Well, that happens with olive oil. I mean, very much. Like, there's all kinds of scams with olive oil.
Right.
So that's a recommend for you, that wine, I take it.
I don't know. It's just a go-to bottle. Sometimes you don't want to open up a fine bottle of wine. You want just something that's, I like to call it cheap and cheerful.
Yeah. I find that those Italian wines are the most are so food friendly, and I think it's because of the acid and you really can eat them with you can drink them with so many types of food. I find, and because they're not overbearing and
Yeah.
I always find they're that word food friendly is overused when it comes to wine, but I think it applies to a lot of these, and especially something like that. It's that's a bottle you can open on what is tonight, Wednesday night, and it's you don't feel that bad about it.
Yeah, exactly.
So my bottle is this Shiloh Secret Reserve Petit Verdot 2020. It's Judean Hills appellation, and a little bit Amichai Lurie is the winemaker, and he very recently my wife and I were in Israel visiting our daughter, and I had the rare opportunity to visit Shiloh, the winery, with a very close friend Simon Jacob, the famous Israeli wine mover and shaker,
Wow.
and my friend Dr. Sam Sofer of New York, and my wife and daughter came, and we had a great time. We also visited Baot. They're right next door to each other. They're very well worth, and Amichai is building a beautiful tasting room. It's a really beautiful place there, and you should have a lot of hatzlacha, and a lot of people should when this war, God willing, is over and we win. I look forward to visiting there again when it's
Yeah.
officially open. It's not open yet, but it's really a beautiful place.
Let's talk about that, Amichai, and the war for a second. And for us in the diaspora, where we think and pray for the soldiers and for the hostages every day, but there's a different war that's going on, and that is of those who are protesting Israel and Israeli products. And Amichai happens to be one of Shiloh Wines was one of the chosen places that the protesters are protesting.
I think he deals with that all the time, and it's something I think about, that what other winemakers in the world have to worry about these kind of nonsense. You can make wine in some of the most repressive countries in the world, and they don't have to worry about labels or not being imported or people protesting them at events. And of course, as we know and we saw very recently, a lot of it's flat out anti-Semitism. It's not about protesting this or there's terrible things occurring in the world that no one's protesting, and I don't have to get into them. Take a look at the news, if that stuff makes it to the news. But
Can you believe that someone is protesting wine?
it's terrible. Just tonight, someone offered me tickets to Matiskau, who is in town here right tonight, and he's had all kinds of concerts canceled because
Yeah,
the venues will cancel on him. They say they don't want to deal with security or whatever. It's all just and he's not even Israeli. He's Jewish.
unbelievable. I was in Cleveland doing a wine tasting last week, and he was there. And after the wine tasting, a bunch of us went over there. I ended up chatting with him for a few hours, and he
Yeah,
is going through such a hard
terrible.
time.
It's unbelievable. But it's something. Something I've noticed with this is a lot of people that are starting to question maybe some of their thoughts on liberalism. I mean, because you see people that supposedly are liberal minded are supporting the most liberal ideas, and pure terrorism. Really, people that should be on the side of a Western country, and this stuff is just it boils down to anti-Semitism, and it's very plain to see. It's
Yeah,
very plain for me to see. I think it's plain for a lot of people. I think a lot of people's eyes have opened. A lot of Jews' eyes have opened, I should say,
yeah.
who may not have thought that so much. And
These countries were very good to our parents and grandparents, and
100%, I am
so
still a
this is
proud
a new, yeah.
American, very proud American, and absolutely, and it's a special country.
We've been dealing with this for a little longer in Canada. I'll give you an example. For the past couple of years, we've had a hard time getting Amichai's wines here in Canada because because it's made not in what they call the Palestinian territories, which everyone can decide for themselves how they feel about that. The Canadian government wants these wines labeled "Made in Palestine."
Yeah, I'm speechless by this stuff, but I'm never surprised. And Canada is Canada. It's I don't know what to say. Maybe it's time for you to move over the border. Um, in fact, I think I just saw today in the news that they're doing they're giving a hard time, probably in Montreal where you are, with the kosher slaughtering. They're
Yeah,
starting with that again.
yes, we're having a big issue with kosher slaughtering now. Oh, I'm surprised it's already made it that far because we've
Yeah,
been dealing with
well,
it for a few months already.
which we know to be done in the most humane way possible. So once again, things boil down to anti-Semitism more than anything
Yeah.
else.
So tell me about the wine. Tell me about the
Um,
Shiloh Secret Reserve.
I, it's interesting. I opened this wine. I was just thinking about it. I was like, it's been open for 2 days. No, it's been open for 9 days. 9 days. Because I
Wow.
did a tasting 9 days ago, and that's when this wine's been open, and it's great. I did keep this. This is a separate, interesting topic: is where do you keep wine? People ask me that all the time. Red wine, white wine. Do you put it on your counter? Do you keep it in your fridge? Cork, pumps, all these things. You get all these questions too, I'm sure. I happened to put this in my fridge because I had so many like leftover bottles from that tasting. I figure I'll stick them in the fridge. Usually, that's my wife gets to them at some point. Um, but this one made it through her clutches, and I was like, when we were talking about, let's just drink something that we have open. I'm like, this is a great wine to check into, like how it's. And I'm telling you, it tastes. It first of all, I would tell you it tastes better than when the first night I had it. It's really like kind of calmed down a little bit with it was pretty fruit forward and a little more oaky than I like. It's really nice tonight. It's really nice. Now it's colder than I would normally drink, and that
In
doesn't.
the fridge.
Yeah, but I took it out a little bit before, but yeah, it's still pretty cold. I really am impressed by this wine. What can I say? Petit Verdot is like not a grape that's made into single varietal wines either. Very often, and it's because like in France, it doesn't do well that way, and that's where it's really from, which why it has that fancy French name. But in like new world places like Israel and California, you're seeing it much more often made into single varietal wines, and this is really good. It looks Petit Verdot. I mean, it's like really dark and inky. Yeah, and like the standard, I would say black fruit, really a lot of black fruit, but it's a softer. It's not like heavy like Cab in terms of like tannins and
Right.
um, but it's very good. And like I am really impressed that this bottle's been open for 9 days.
It's a great question because I get it all the time. And I think that you were right by keeping it in the fridge. I always say to people, you keep your wine in the fridge.
I never do
Um,
that.
it
I
will
never
last
do
a
that.
little longer, but get it back to room temperature before you drink it.
Right. I don't know why I don't do that. I've had this discussion with people. It's like a controversy is a heavy word. It's not controversy, but I don't know if anyone knows what one way or the other. Obviously, it seems that if you keep it in the fridge, like anything else you keep in the fridge, it's going to keep it longer. I just don't typically do that with reds. I put all of my whites that are left over in the fridge. Um, but reds, I don't know. I mean, the reality is it's very rare that a wine sits for 9 days open in my house anyway. Someone's going to finish it. So,
Why not today?
well, it's 9 days. So, yeah, I think it's great. I think what Amichai is doing is great. I can once again say, as I, buy Israeli wine, drink Israeli wine, it's something that we can do to help. I just recently wrote about Israel wine in the war for the Jewish Link Wine Guide, which is about to come out. That is a plug, not for me as much as for them, and they are friends. But every single winemaker I spoke to said the exact same thing. What can we do to help? Buy Israeli wine, drink Israeli
I
wine,
really think
eat
that for
Israeli wine.
Pesach, for the Seder this year,
Yeah.
if you're sitting in the diaspora at a Seder, we should all be not next year in Jerusalem, this year in Jerusalem. But if you can't be in Jerusalem for whatever reason, if you're sitting in the diaspora at a Seder, you need to have Israeli wine. I think it's imperative this year.
Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. I mean, I've really been trying to buy a lot more. I'm encouraging people to buy, but 100%. And that's like you made the point. Why that idea of like being in Eretz Yisrael and whatever? I think that's a really special thing to drink Israeli wine. I know a lot of people that do that on a yearly basis. At the Seder, they drink Israeli wine specifically for that reason. And I think this year more than ever, that's a
And it's
little thing we
interesting
can
that
do.
that you have that varietal Petit Verdot. I remember Petit Verdot coming out on the Israeli market a number of years ago, and they were always just used as like a little bit in a blend. They weren't sure. Like it's almost like the Israeli winemakers at first didn't know what to do with it, and they were doing what
They were
France
doing
always
what
did.
was done in France, like you said.
Yeah,
Exactly. They were doing what was done in France. And I think Israel, like, it's still learning its way around like what's going to work. And of course, like anything else, it's a business, and they're going to do what sells. And that's everyone like wine critics, or so to speak, like to criticize everything winemakers do, but like they're running a business, and they're going to do what sells, and that's
yeah.
what they should do. But they're still learning what works best. And you forget how young the modern wine industry is in
Green.
Israel. It's really very young,
Yeah,
and it's really made a mark on the world already. But it's come a long way. But just like you said, I think that's you already seeing the difference of like now you're seeing a Petit Verdot varietal made that way, and you'll see Barbera made that way. And some of the whites you'll see, which are really spectacular there. Like
yeah.
so, yeah, it's amazing. Like
When I think of Petit Verdot now, I don't even think of France anymore. I think of Israel now
that's
because what Israel is doing with Petit Verdot is unbelievable. The Pelter, their Matar Petit Verdot, that varietal, the 2017 is one of my favorite bottles of wine right now.
That's amazing. Yeah. Pelter is an interesting case itself. We'll have to
Yeah,
do one of those one week.
the non-kosher wineries in Israel doing kosher runs.
I called it Pelter and you said Matar, but that's the same winery. That's what they
No,
use.
Pelter
Pelter,
Winery,
right. I'm
Matar
saying
is their kosher brand. Yeah,
correct. Yeah. Pelter is the non-kosher one, and Matar is, it's the vast majority of wines produced in Israel by bottles, let's say, kosher. But there's lots of actually non-kosher wineries in Israel, but they're very small. The biggest players, which are comprise the vast majority of bottles produced, are kosher, like Barkan and Carmel, which is like half,
yeah.
if not more.
Yarden, Golan Heights.
Yeah, there's the top two by a lot. They each produce 15 million bottles a year, Carmel and Barkan. Then it goes to the next ones you'll think of. That's a second tier, and then the third tier is bottles is wineries like Shiloh, which are at the like 300,000-400,000 bottles. Amichai he's great. I mean, he's really growing that place. It's a young winery. I can't remember the year. I want to say like 2005 or something like that. It's less than 20 years old, Shiloh.
Yeah,
I think about how predominant it is in the market and how many people know it, and I think he's responsible for that. He's a
I
very
think the fact
energetic
that he's
guy.
I think the fact that he's native English speaker also helps.
That's true. Yeah, but he really works hard at it. He really works hard at it.
Yeah,
He's just like a restless, businessman, marketer, and he has that passion for it. And there's lots of people like him, but
yeah.
he's
I
still,
always I always go to the trade shows and the wine shows in the diaspora, especially in the U.S. And he, without fail, is there at every single one, and he is there. I mean, there's nobody else that shows up like he shows up.
I don't even know how he does it.
Yeah,
Yes, I agree. But this is really, really nice wine, and I tasted some interesting things he's working on when I was at the winery, and he's always looking for new adventures too. But like, if you get a chance to get to Israel and have a day to go to visit a winery, that's going to be a really cool place to visit because it's a beautiful place. It's in a beautiful spot in the country. And also, like I said, Gbaod is right next door, so you could do two wineries, two great wineries in one day.
Historically, I mean, I know some people are shocked to hear that there was Israel before 1948, but historically, that region was the best wine region of Israel.
Right, right. Until like what's now considered, of course, is in the north, in
Right.
Galil and like in the Golan Heights and whatever, which is kind of internationally thought that way. I don't even know if I agree with that. Like, it's like there's great wines being made all over Israel now, and like we talked about in the first one, the middle of the desert is like there's fantastic
Yeah.
wine being made. So and what's really unique about Israel is that it's such a teeny country, the size of what Rhode Island or Delaware or one of these kind of states, is that you have such you know diverse geography. You have snow peak mountaintops. You have the lowest point on earth. You have the Mediterranean. it's incredible. So you get such a diversity of the wines you're able to make there too because of that, which
I
is
mean,
really interesting,
where else in the world can you surf and ski in the same day?
right? I don't know the answer. But that's probably, I would guess just Israel. I don't know.
Yeah. But I'm saying, but think about what kind of wine that makes.
Right, exactly, because you have such diversity of topography and geography and soil, which are all the most important things, and that's a really cool thing.
Yeah.
So, God willing, we'll taste a lot more amazing wines coming out of
When
Israel.
I do tastings, one of my favorite things to do is Israel against the world.
Unfortunately, it's always is Israel against the world, but for now,
I'm
a
saying,
little
but
bit.
it's just in the tasting to be able to like take some of these
Oh,
old wine regions and
yeah,
then to pair them up with an Israeli wine and see how Israel's doing compared to like France and Italy and Spain and some of like the greatest wine regions in the world.
yeah. The best way to really really learn wine is blind tasting, and like I love giving people also, like you said, put a French wine and an Israeli wine in front of people and let them try to taste it for themselves, figure out what, and people are always astounded. It's amazing. It's amazing. So I think there's so much potential and for continued growth, and it's really exciting. And really, everywhere you go there, I'll tell you this: I'm like where I come from in Baltimore. There's visiting a kosher winery is like, where am I going? So there are now. There's a guy in Pennsylvania. We'll talk about him eventually. He's doing really cool stuff. But like he has a winery. It's not a vineyard. He doesn't
Right.
have an estate winery, so he doesn't have vineyards. I never even had that experience until I was in Israel. Obviously you can go to California and do that, and even there, it's not. You go to Herzog, and Herzog is when you visit Herzog, you're in a factory. You're not in a. You don't look
But there
outside.
are. I mean, there's 15 kosher wineries in California now.
Right. But my point is that I was not able to visit like like an estate winery with the vineyards and that kind of until I was in Israel. And there you could travel anywhere you are in the country. You don't have to go far, and you're standing in a vineyard and someone's making wine, and it's amazing. It's like the blossoming of the country. We're
Right.
seeing that stuff right in front of us, and it's there. We know what that means, but it's amazing. It's
From
amazing.
the Ottoman Empire that forbade the wine to
Right.
today, where it's such a huge part of
Right. Right.
definitely of a tourism industry in Israel.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's amazing.
So, Kenny, it's wonderful to be with you.
It's great.
Just to
So far. I love it.
this is great.
I love it.
Uh, just to end off, Purim is in a few days. What are you drinking for Purim?
I haven't even thought about that. We are making the Suda with very close friends, and he's a huge wine guy who has a very nice cellar. That may or may not be coincidental why I'm eating there. I don't even like the guy. I like his cellar. No, I love him. He's a close friend, and I haven't thought about it. People ask me that all the time. I'm sure you get it. Like, what are you drinking for? What are you planning on taking out the
Yeah.
Seder? Type of stuff. I'm a spontaneous guy with that. I'm gonna like whatever strikes my fancy.
Same
You know?
here.
Yeah.
I have a great idea. Let's get together on Shushan Purim
Right.
and let's share what we had and maybe even some leftovers if there is.
Perfect. I love the idea. Absolutely. Looking forward. And Friedrich and Purim to you.
Same to you. And I hope that we can truly be B'Simcha this Purim in a way where we have our hostages back and we can celebrate with them and with all of the Jewish people of
Amen.
some true peace. True peace.
Amen.